The 15th and final category on my player power rankings, which has just been my effort to fill this barren patch with no international rugby, or really any rugby, with something rugby related to tide us over. The Rugby Championship is back this weekend, and I'm finishing the player power rankings, well, today, but tomorrow I'll have a video just kind of wrapping up and picking an overall top 10 from all the players. So that's going to be a bit of a head scratcher. But this was a head scratcher as well. This is a great position because the fullbacks now, not just the last line of defence, not just a safe pair of hands, great defensive rock. They also have to be a brilliant attacker, and they're quite often now the second playmaker of a team and hugely instrumental on both sides of the ball. We've got an incredible bunch of 10 players. Some really good players can't even make the list. There are 6 players going up, 2 players going down, 2 players staying where they are, 2 new faces, 2 players dropping out. Your thoughts as ever in the comments down below. And I tell you what, if you appreciate the content on the channel, it is just me. I am a one-man band. This whole channel is just me. I'm Tim. This is Egg Chasers. And one way you can help, it doesn't cost you anything or take you any time, just give the video a thumbs up. Apparently that helps with the algorithm to spread the word, and I would love it if you would. Number 10, George Furbank. He's come of age this year. He made his debut for England 4.5 years ago and never established himself. He got a couple of bites of the cherry, but Freddie Stewart just burst on the scene and looked like, and everyone was saying, I remember this, back when Freddie Stewart arrived, everyone was saying Freddie Stewart's going to be England's fullback for the next 10 years. Well, George Furbank's had something to say about that. He's been brilliant for Northampton Saints. He won the Premiership title with them this year. He's been great for them for a couple of years now, and he's been so good that selecting him couldn't be avoided, and he came in halfway through the Six Nations, a couple of appearances from the bench, and then he started the final 3 games, and he has completely changed the way England play. And you saw that in that win against Ireland, you saw it in his performance against New Zealand away, and then he missed due to injury that second test in New Zealand, which was a real shame. And when he wasn't there, you missed that attacking threat that he brings. A good all-round fullback, and definitely if he carries on like this, he'll be moving up this list. Ange Capuozzo, the little rugby pixie, still only 25 years of age. He's had a great season, 11 starts for Italy in the last year, 6 tries in that time. He was part of the woeful Italy side at the Rugby World Cup. Actually, he was one of the good performers in that horrible World Cup for them. He was great in the Six Nations, and it was that match against Wales. The winning try was scored by Pani, but the legwork for that was done by Ange Capuozzo, doing what he can do as well as anybody. An incredible break, gas down the touchline, step to beat the last man, fixed the guy, passed inside, perfect timing, perfect execution, incredible attack, and put his teammate in under the posts. Conversion, Italy beat Wales in Wales. Everyone goes to delirium, but it all really, that last try was down to that man. He is ace. Number 9, Ange Capuozzo. Number 8, his Toulouse teammate Juan Cruz Mallia, who has established himself as a regular for Argentina, now 35 caps. He was an ever-present during the World Cup when they finished 4th. He's had a little bit of a break following a long top 14 season, which has seen him win everything with Toulouse. And now he's back, named to start fullback to begin the Rugby Championship in New Zealand. And he's a very, very good player, is Juan Cruz Mallia. So is Davit Niniashvili, another guy who plies his rugby in the French league, and he's the youngest on this list. And he's one of the best young players in world rugby, full stop, is Davit Niniashvili. And if he were English or Irish or South African or New Zealander or whatever, one of the big countries, he'd be a superstar. He is so good. And I really hope it's players like Davit Niniashvili that really make me hope that there is a door open to the top table for countries like Georgia, because they have got some unreal talent. Same with Portugal, same with Uruguay. But maybe this guy, Santi Arata, I called the best player in Tier 2 rugby on the scrum half list. I'd say Davit Niniashvili is probably the second best player in Tier 2 rugby. He's so good and just does some outrageous things. He's got X factor. And he plays a bit on the wing, mostly at fullback, which is why he's on this list. And he's just behind, from the youngest guy on the list to the eldest, Willie Roux. I love his redemption arc that he's been on. Go back 18 months, 2 years, and Willie Roux was public enemy number 1. I certainly got that impression from South African fans. They were not impressed by this guy. And oddly, it's only when Damian Willemse has been out with a long-term injury and that 15 jersey's been up for grabs, the control that Willie Roux brings to it has just made everyone breathe a sigh of relief when it comes to that Springbok 15 jersey, because Willie Roux's like, I've got this. And you notice it when he's not there. Just ask the Bulls. At the Bulls, there is no replacement for Willie Roux. His passing is as good as anyone in World Rugby. The way he reads a game and the way he can come in. And I mentioned that not only do you have to be a good last line of defence, you have to be, nowadays, a great second playmaker. I'm not sure there's a better. There might be other fullbacks that are as good in that second playmaker role, and I'll come on to a couple of them. There's very few that are much better than Willie Roux at that particular element of fullback play. And he's closing in on 100 caps for South Africa. 2 World Cup medals to his name already. 34 years of age, and showing no signs of stopping just yet. I really considered putting Blair Kinghorn higher on this list. He's exactly where he was last time at number 5. So close to breaking into the top 4, who are, as you will see, incredible names. And Blair Kinghorn, he's really pushing them hard. He's had a brilliant year for club and country. And when you look at Scotland in general, think of their back line. They're in a good place. Ben White's been listed among the scrum halves. Finn Russell was high up the fly halves. You've got Duhan van der Merwe and Kyle Steyn for the wings. Tui Polotu and Hugh Jones with the centres. I'd say this guy's the best of the lot. Absolute stardust from Blair Kinghorn. And, I mean, he's had such a good year. He went from Edinburgh to Toulouse, and he's just cleaned up and won absolutely everything with Toulouse. That's 3 Toulouse fullbacks on this list. We've only had 6 players so far. He'll definitely be in the British and Irish Lions squad if fit, and he's pushing for a starting spot. Damian Willemse, he is down a spot. He's been injured, so he hasn't been able to do much since the Rugby World Cup, in a South Africa jersey anyway. He's played a bit for the Stormers, where he's basically flipped between 12 and 15. What are the Stormers going to do, by the way, when they've got Marnie Lebok, Sasha Feinberg and Gomazulu and Damian Willemse fit and available? Are they just going to, I reckon they should just pull their position out of a tombola, put the 10, the 12 and the 15 shirt in a tombola, mix it up and just let them pick it out each game. Sasha, you're 12 today. Oh, Sasha, you're 10. Damian, you're 15 today, but you'll be 10 next week. They could just take it in turns as well. Outrageous talents. He is one of them. And at 26 years of age, he's won 2 World Cups. He could be 29 when he wins the 3rd World Cup. He could win 4 World Cups in his career. Mind-blowing. He's so good. Damian Willemse is at number 4. Into the top 3 then, Thomas Ramos, who was, go back a couple of years, the best fullback in the world. Well, in my humble opinion anyway. He was unparalleled. His attacking ability, added to the fact he was about the best goal kicker in World Rugby. And he is such a talent. Like all French players, it seems, when you take Antoine Dupont out of that team due to unavailability, and when you take Romain Ntamak, their fullback, out of that team due to injury, funnily enough, they're not quite as good. It's only a small, tiny thing, but every French player has struggled a little bit. I don't know whether it was a World Cup hangover and they were just that devastated, but there was just like a little couple of % difference in every player during the Six Nations. I'm sure they'll bounce back. Thomas Ramos still got a big future with that French team. At number 2, going up, leapfrogging Damian Willemse and Thomas Ramos, one of the greatest players of his generation, Beauden Barrett, and he is so good. And I think this happens quite a lot, and I think it happened with Willie Roux as well. Talked about the redemption arc that he's been on. I think it happens when a player is so good for so long, you start to take for granted just how good they are, and you start focusing on the new shiny toy that seems a bit more exciting, and you just forget about the pedigree that you've got right there. And I think New Zealand fans are probably a little bit guilty of having done that with Beauden Barrett in some cases. He's absolutely priceless for them. As I say, one of the best players of his generation, one of the greatest players ever, 126 caps for New Zealand. He's 6 tries away from their all-time try-scoring record. He's on 43. He's scored over 700 points, and he's 3rd in the... he's the most capped New Zealand back. And by the end of this Rugby Championship, if he plays every game, he will be 3rd in the all-time list of most capped All Blacks, behind Sam Whitelock and Richie McCaw only. Add to that, he's also a lovely bloke. Beauden Barrett is number 2. Number 1, Hugo Keenan. It's so hard. These top 4 in particular, you could shake up the snow globe, put them in any order, and I'd kind of go, yeah, okay, there's a case to be made that Beauden Barrett's number 1, Damian Willemse is number 1, Ramos is number 1. I've gone for Hugo Keenan, and here was my thinking. If I wanted a fullback who I could slot into lots of different positions, and they're just so talented that they kind of could fulfill loads of roles for a team, I'd go Beauden Barrett. I'd go Damian Willemse. Ramos and Blair Kinghorn, to be fair, would fall into that category. If I wanted a great goal kicker, I'd pick Ramos. If I wanted someone that was just pure attack, I might pick Beauden Barrett or Blair Kinghorn. The person who does the fullback fundamentals better and more consistently than any other option is Hugo Keenan. He is so consistent and he does the fundamentals so well. Honestly, I reckon you can count the number of mistakes Hugo Keenan has made in his career on one hand. They're so rare. And I'll tell you what it was. It was during the COVID period. I remember there was no crowds. Oh, I hate to think about that time. It was awful. Anyway, there were no crowds, but I was still working on the rugby, and I went over to Dublin a few times to watch Leinster in some of those big Champions Cup matches. And because there was no crowd, you could hear the players on the pitch. And what struck me more than anything was this guy never stops talking. Firstly, he never stops moving. I reckon if you put a GPS tracker on Hugo Keenan, he would cover more miles than any other player on the pitch. It's phenomenal to watch. But he never stops talking. And you just hear him pulling players into position, telling them they're out of position, nudging them over, constantly talking. He is the eyes and ears of his team. And in that manner, what I would say is Hugo Keenan is brilliant in and of himself. But I think in a way, probably more than anyone else on this list. And when I play, this is one of the things I really appreciate about a great fullback as well. He makes everyone else on his team 10% better when he's there. Just by his sheer presence and what he brings. He's an amazing player in his own right. He makes everyone better. And when you think Ireland have been operating right at the top of world rugby, mixing it with the big boys, winning series tours away in New Zealand, being the world number 1, equaling the record number of test victories, winning Grand Slams and Six Nations. We'll leave World Cups to one side. They can deal with that one in a few years' time. He's been a massive, massive part of that. And I don't think you can underestimate the role that Hugo Keenan has had on this Irish team. So that's why he's my number 1. But honestly, that top 4 are just different gravy. They really are so good. The whole top 10 is brilliant. And an amazing little stat, 4 players from Toulouse in one list of 10 fullbacks. That is insane. Ange Capuozzo, Juan Cruz Mallia, Blair Kinghorn and Ramos, all from one club. Nuts. Quite often 3 of them play in the same back 3. Like in the top 14 final, it was Ramos at 15, Blair Kinghorn on one wing and Juan Cruz Mallia on the other with Ange Capuozzo on the bench. Absolutely stacked. It's brilliant. Well, I think it's a brilliant list of 10. Tell me what you think. And that is that's the player power rankings done. Although, what I'm going to do tomorrow and in the final video, just to tie a little bow on this whole thing over the last couple of weeks, I am going to do an overall top 10. The top 10 forwards, the top 10 backs, and the top 10 players, full stop, overall in the world right now. And that is going to be a bit of a head scratcher, so I need a little bit of time. I'll be back tomorrow with that. You can tell me what you think about that as well in the comments down below, and I'll see you there.